All right, let's go ahead and get started. So again, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar presentation titled Ensure Ideal Performance and Access for All Your Customers Everywhere, brought to you by Cockroach Labs. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items that I need to go over. First, if you have any questions for our presenters today, post those into the questions panel so we can get to them after the presentation. Secondly, if you experience any technical difficulties today, please post a message into the panel and I will work with you to resolve those issues. Last on my housekeeping list, today's presentation is being recorded. It will be available shortly after the webinar concludes. Now that we are through those housekeeping items, I would like to introduce you to our two presenters today. First, Jim Walker. Jim is a recovering developer turned product marketer and has spent his career in emerging tech and open source. He believes product marketing is a core strategic function for early-stage companies and helps them translate complex concepts into a compelling, effective core narrative and market strategy. He is an advocate of the developer and an active participant in several open source communities. Our second presenter today is Chris Casano. Chris works for his team of solution engineers and customers by putting their success first. His background includes working with various data technologies to help solve customer problems. When he's not working, he enjoys sports, carpentry, gardening, and telling dad jokes to his 4 kids and his loving wife. At this time, I'd like to pass it off to both of you for the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Drew. That was great. And I guess, Chris, I'm going to invite you on video because why not? We'll just show ourselves here like we usually do. Can I do the presentation at the same time? Hold on a second here. Let me just make sure. All right, great. You can see my screen then, Chris?
Yeah, you look great.
Great, awesome. All right, so you look good too, and I appreciate the dad jokes part of your thing because we're actually gonna work that into our presentation today in the demo. We're real excited about this. This is a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts here at Cockroach Labs, and it's all about how do you deploy an application across multiple regions and really using the database to do that. We spend a lot of time thinking about that here at Cockroach. We're true believers and kind of advocates of distributed systems, and distributed really means physical location of data and physical location of where your applications are running. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of slides of why people think about this, and then we're going to spend a fair amount of time with hands on keyboard. Chris is going to show a demo. So, but please, if there's any questions, please ask them along the way. We love questions. Chris and I are fairly open to being interrupted and asked about things along the way. So with that, I'll just get started really quickly here and go through kind of a setup of the demo itself. So, why do we think about distributed applications and running things in multiple different regions and these sort of things? I think we deploy our applications all over the place. When we think about it, we really think about 3 different things: latency, availability, and client and compliance. Am I meeting the expectations of my customers no matter where they're at? Can I speed the access of data to them? Do they have access to that? Am I surviving outages of not just a server or a rack or an availability zone, but can I survive the failure of an entire region and still have access to my data? And then, often I think this is an emerging area of concern is around compliance. I think there's this complex web of regulatory compliance that we have to actually take care of, and especially if you're a global company. But even any company needs to deal with that. How we actually deal with that is that code level, application level logic that we're doing to store data in particular locations. Say German data leads live in Germany, that sort of thing, right? And so how do you actually do with that? For us and for our belief, of course, this kind of happened in the database, but each one of these things have significant impacts on our business. There's some stats about Amazon and Google about latencies of access to data and how it affects them at large scale. I think it affects us more from a consumer point of view. I think nobody has patience these days, and anything over 100 milliseconds means there seems like there's a lag, and that's a bad customer experience. People just don't like that. But I think the availability thing is actually a big deal. And this is, how do you avoid both planned and unplanned downtime? Because look, everything fails. You're going to have unplanned downtime. And what is the cost of that? Not just of the time away, but how do you remediate these events and take advantage of, or get your systems aligned and proper after an event, right? This active passive setups for kind of disaster recovery are wrought with issues. And then finally, compliance. I think there's just an increasing amount of regulations, and these things have teeth. Non-compliance can be millions in fines, depending on how much data you have put out there. And actually, it's respectful to your consumer, to meet their data privacy concerns and what they want to do. I mean, they live in these different jurisdictions across the planet because, well, they want to, and they vote for these regulatory compliance kind of issues to come in. And so it's really a respect thing as well. And I think that's why we think about kind of deploying applications across multiple different regions, but there are these challenges, right? It's fairly easy to deploy the application this way. Preferably do this with like HTTP caching. You use like global load balancing, right? You have a single database living in one region, and then the application is all accessing that database across these long, huge hops, right? Well, it's easy, and it may reduce latency locally to get to the application itself. The application still needs to access the database, and so this multi-region database, actually deploying a single database in kind of one region, you're going to add latencies. We can't beat the speed of light. Speed of light's no joke, right? And so you're going to be vulnerable to data outages if you're in a single region. There's lots of different reasons why this is a challenge, and we're going to show you kind of how to solve this kind of using a database that's really built to be distributed and multi-region, right? Because this multi-region application but single region database basically is going to just hold you back to ultimately single region, right? I think it's kind of the lowest common denominator here is that database. And so we can do all this great work in terms of deploying things across the entire planet to reduce latencies, but ultimately accessing a single instance of a database, a stovepipe database is going to cause issues, right? And so when we think about this, being truly multi-region really requires a different architecture for the database, and it really requires you to be distributed from the ground up. And it really, at Cockroach, we think a lot about this in terms of how do you deploy data into different regions, and how do you ensure that data is partitioned into particular parts of the planet. One of the unique capabilities we'd like to talk about is something called geo-partitioning, where the database itself can actually inspect each row and say, oh, is this German data? Have it live on German servers, and control all that. And we've really made that as simple as a few DML statements, and we're going to show you how to actually do that today within Cockroach Database itself. But for us, really kind of addressing the latency concerns, addressing the availability requirements, and being respectful of these compliance regulations really comes down to a distributed database. And there is an emerging group of databases that are doing this. Cockroach is one of them for sure. But if you're going to look at any sort of global deployment, really thinking through your data as a multi-region database is, we feel, very, very critical. And we'll show you how we do that, right? So, oh wait, before I get to the demo, Chris, one second, I have one more slide. So, if you're going to think about low latency, it's not just access to data, it's actually writes as well. So for both reads and writes, I think that's a requirement you need to think about. And then ensuring consistency across the planet too. So if somebody writes a record in, say, Sydney, and somebody writes a record in London or New York, and it happens at the same time, which transaction wins? And so being able to actually isolate transactions and deal with those things, really, really important. From an availability point of view, I think it's, when we think about disaster recovery, we think a lot about failure domains and how do you maintain, consistency of data if it's written, in a clustered environment, even in those instances, right? In Cockroach, we actually write data in triplicate throughout the cluster, and any write is going to require a quorum write. So 2 of 3 of the nodes, 2 of 3 of the copies have to actually commit that, right? And so a lot of work is done there. And then this ability to tie data to a particular location is really, really critical. The magic of a multi-region database is, you have nodes all over the planet, but any one of those nodes can serve as an endpoint and find data no matter where it lives, and in any region, right? So one single logical database deployed across multiple regions A region in this case could be, you know, a different region within a cloud provider, but it could be even a different cloud provider itself, right? You could actually deploy a single logical database across, you know, multiple different public clouds, which we find kind of a unique capability here. But again, it's all about realizing and mitigating risk. You know, do you want to be all in on a particular cloud provider or not? And so distributed databases allow you to kind of address this and think about this in a real different way. And so, but that's an intro. We wanted to make this a little bit more tactical and show you how to do this. And so my friend Chris is with us today. So Chris, this is your turn now, man. It's your turn to shine. So do you want to come in and do them?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see this. How's that look?
I can see, yeah, I can see you, buddy. I can see your beautiful shirt. I can see your screen. I can see everything.
Thanks, Jim. All right, cool. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to give you basically two demos today. I'm going to show you some of the new multi-region capabilities within our Cockroach Cloud offering. And then I'm going to show you how you can actually create, test, build, develop multi-region applications just on your laptop. And it's a really simple and easy thing to do. If you want to follow along, I'm going to put in the chat here the tutorial. So if you want to do this later on or follow along with me, you can go to my GitHub page, and it has the listing of all the steps as far as the demo that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so it's leave behind, or you can follow along as we do the demo. So if folks are not familiar with Cockroach Cloud, this is our managed offering where we actually host the database for you. You connect the Cockroach Cloud, and we essentially give you an endpoint, a database endpoint that you can connect your application to, and off you go. And some of the new features that are here today is that you can create multi-region clusters, right? You can also create free clusters if you want to just go test things out. So we have a Cockroach Cloud free offering. It's not multi-region, but at least allows you to get started for free. And then if you want to do a multi-region cluster, it's really easy to come into the website. You pick your provider, whether it's Google or AWS. You can pick the different regions that you want to use within that provider. So you can go up to 3 regions, 4 regions, 5 regions. You can add as many regions as you need. And then choose the number of nodes in each of those regions. Click the type of hardware that you want to use. There's a couple different t-shirt sizes from 2 vCPUs up to 16. And then you click go, and that's it. And your cluster is off and getting created for you. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes, and then you'll be able to connect to your cluster. You can VPC peer your application network to the database network, and it's real simple and easy to get off the ground. Now you might be saying, well, I don't know if my manager could let me, pay $4.50 an hour to, deploy a multi-region application. How can I just do this on my local laptop? And that's what I'm going to show you today, right? So let me come out of this, and oops, wrong way. And if you look at my link that's in the chat, there's a real simple way to do this. And there's a tool within our database called Cockroach Demo. And this allows you to simulate a multi-region cluster right on your laptop. It is the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is install Cockroach. Installing Cockroach is really simple. It's just a single binary. If you're doing this on Windows, again, you just deploy the binary to use a local bin. If you're doing this on Windows, you just can do it through PowerShell. It's a really simple install process, especially for a database. And once you're, you're in, I'm on a Mac, so I'm in a Mac shell right now. But it's really easy to kick this off. All you have to do is just writing Cockroach Demo. We're going to create a global database that has 9 nodes, and we're going to make the cluster empty. We don't. That basically means we don't want any sample data. All right. What I do?
And Chris, Cockroach Demo just comes natively in the binary itself, right? So every instance of Cockroach just has this included in it, right?
Exactly. There's nothing you need to do. You deploy the binary, and then you can click this and go.
Great.
And what's neat about this, it gives you everything that you need. So it gives you an admin UI link, right? And so then I can go into a web browser, put the link here, and I'll log in. I'll be able to see my multi-region cluster, right? So here's my cluster. Let me get rid of this little sign up thing. But you can see the cluster's building. We have 9 live nodes, and we have 3 regions. We have, 3 nodes in US West, 3 in US East, and 3 in Europe. The best part about this is that there's network latency. So you can actually see what is the latency going to be as I start creating queries on a multi-region cluster. This has always been super hard to try to simulate on your laptop, right? It's hard to simulate network latency, within Docker, within, doing all sorts of other gymnastics to make this work, but we do it right here in the binary for you. So as you're building your app, you can see what the expected latencies might be depending on how you structure the database and structure your application. So you can see here, it's, between, US East and Europe West, we have about 70 milliseconds. US West to Europe is about 150 milliseconds. So it gives us a good, feel about how this database is gonna how it's gonna perform.
And Chris, that's just the line speed. That's just the hard line speed. I mean, if you're thinking about that, sometimes transactions are going back multiple different times, right? Like the round trip times is what people are really thinking about. We're just measuring just hardcore, like, okay, there's a cable running between this place and the next, right?
Yeah, exactly that. It's basically the ping round trip time between each of the regions. That's all we're showing. It's between the nodes. So it's always good to come here to see, hey, is there something wrong, even slowing the infrastructure if you wanted to. It's a great graph to use within the database. Okay, so cool. We're all set up. And let's just show a couple things. So if we want, we can show the regions that are available in the cluster, right? We can see we have Europe, US East, and US West. We do have a lot of new nifty shortcuts in the database now. So if you do this \*, it brings you up this whole tutorial of all these other things that you can do within the database. And there's a few of them that are just really make your lives easier. One of them is that I can use this demo ls command, and it's going to show me all the other nodes within the database. Okay, so what this means is I can actually connect to other nodes in the database. I don't just have to be, right now I'm on the US East node on availability zone B. So if you type in show locality, it'll show where you are. But I can create another, command interface to, to pretend that I'm actually in Europe. So let's just do that. I'll take this SQL command, go into this other shell, and there you go. And it's going to simulate that I'm in Europe now, right? So I'm in Europe West. So I'll use this beige screen here to simulate I'm in Europe, and then the black screen to pretend I'm in the Death Star of America. Okay, so let's load up some data. Again, we have a couple cool commands that can even let you show, hey, what's to list the directory that I'm in, to show what other files are there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load up this file called setup.sql, and that's going to go ahead and create a couple of database objects. I'll show you what's in there. As it's running, let me go to my other screen. There we go. I'll just show what some of the SQL commands are. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to create a database called DAD. And in DAD, I'm going to pick a primary region of that database, which is going to be the US East. In that DAD database, I'm going to create a jokes table. And in that jokes table, I'm going to have a whole bunch of jokes with the joke and the punchline and so forth. So that's all going to get created for me. All right. So let's go see how that table performs. So I'm in the US region. I'm just going to do a quick select on dad jokes. Select star from dad jokes. And you can see it's really snappy, right? Millisecond performance, I can get those reads. Let's see what it's like in Europe. So same thing. And you can see it's not as snappy, right? It's about, it's
65
about milliseconds, 65 milliseconds. It takes a little bit of time. And the reason why is because the way that we set up these multi-region abstractions is to make this really easy for the end user. If you create something in a primary region, that's going to be your primary region where you can get fast reads and writes. Now, there's other things we can do to make reads really fast. We have, we'll call latency equality across all the different regions. Or if we want to move our primary region, we can do that as well. So let's just say I'm in, my application is primarily going to run out of Europe. all I have to do is create an alter command. I can do alter database dad and say primary region is Europe West 1. And then this will do this live. It doesn't shut the database down or anything, but it will slowly move, you know, what we call the ranges in the background and the leaseholders. Those are basically all the way that we shard all the data in the database and then pick leaders as far as who's coordinating the reads and writes of the data. And we'll start moving those things into Europe West so that Europe West can actually become pretty snappy. And this takes a few seconds for it to happen.
Chris, Europe West, the name Europe West as a region, I mean, you configured that, and then you basically took nodes of Cockroach, the 3 nodes of Cockroach, and assigned them to Europe West, correct? I mean, that was all just part of the deployment. I know we didn't show that, but just to be very clear, right? Like, just to be explicitly clear, right? That's what happened up front.
Yeah, so if we use show regions from database dad,
yeah,
you pick the regions that you want to use for your database. So think about this. You have a cluster. The cluster can span, let's just say 5 regions, all right? Then you can say, I have a database in that cluster, and I only want to use these 3 regions for that particular database. So it's really, I mean, you have a lot of granularity as far as how you want to place your data within your cluster, how you want it to be accessed, and how you want to lower latencies. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and the new multi-region features that you see here, where I can just show regions, alter the database, even alter the survival goal of the database, makes this really simple for developers.
So how long does it take for all these regions or these ranges, the data to be moved around so it is easier to access? Is that all done now?
Yeah, that's all done for you. So
I mean, you only had what, like 8 rows. I mean, there's a couple of dad jokes I can add to you, but that's if you want more, including your shirt, dude. Really, seriously, this is great.
I know, it's just, yeah, it's a big theme today.
Database,
Yeah. Just trying to, it's you know, it can be a little bit of a dry topic sometimes, so I'm trying to add some a little fire to it. But yeah, you can see here, all I had to do was alter the database, pick a new primary region, and now my reads are fast in Europe, but you know, they're a little bit slow in the US now. I kind of like traded it off. I'm basically kicking the can over the pond, right? But again, you can do other nifty things, such as creating global tables within the database. And a global table will basically allow you to have fast reads everywhere for all the regions you pick for your database. So let's show it. So we're going to alter table add jokes. And we're going to set the locality to be global. Okay. Again, this is going to be, you know, a background test. You can continue to use the database, so even as it's running. Well, I already finished, but I can still query the database as this stuff is happening. So again, this is going to kind of restructure the table a little bit. And if I show the create statement for what dad jokes looks like now, it's going to automatically add the DDL to my table, but it set the locality for that table to be global. And this is nifty too. You can do, if you want to see where all the shards of your data are, you can do show ranges from table dad.jokes, and we'll see where everything's going. All right, so right now we only have 1 shard of 1 range, range 37. The primary leader or leaseholders is still in Europe. We can see that the replicas are across the database, and it has it in East, West, and Europe West.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's creating those ranges across all those different regions so that I can get fast reads everywhere. So let's show this. So if we do a select from
I think there was a dad joke in your typo somewhere, a select. I don't know. We'll make one up, Chris.
Oh, really?
It's okay. Now you're good.
All right, so yeah, so now you can see that I have fast, snappy reads within East, and then let's see if I can get the same in Europe. And I got fast reads everywhere now. But you're probably asking, well, what does this mean on the writes? And yeah, you're definitely going to take a little bit of a penalty on the writes, but it's not terrible. And some use cases allow you to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, I'm going to add some more jokes. All right, let's add another another joke into US East, and we'll see what that latency is like. So here's the joke I'm going to add in US East, and you can see it takes a little bit of time. I can add this a couple more times just so people can see it. Yeah, it does take a little while, almost a second to a degree, to get this right in. And same as on the, within Europe. If I go to Europe, you'll kind of see the same thing. And it's not terrible. Like, there's some use cases that are great for this. A lot of our identity management use cases are fine with this. They want fast reads in different regions, but the writes can be a little slow. That's fine. But there's other times where maybe you don't want to have this write penalty, and you really want fast reads and writes in region. So there's one last option that you can use, and that is using a regional by row table. So I'll explain what that means in just a second. Let me type the command here, and I'll explain what's happening. So alter table, dad jokes. Actually, let me get that. I don't want to create a typo. Let me just get the right one. There we go. Okay, so what this is going to do is basically to take my table that I have, our dad jokes table, and it's going to start partitioning it. It's going to create a invisible column that you can query. It's basically a region column. And anytime I insert data from a certain region, so if I insert data from Europe, it's going to place that data in Europe. So that ensures that anytime I have region Europe, reach from a European client, it's going to be a fast local read. So what that allows me to do is have fast reads and writes within a region, which is kind of neat. So yeah, so let's see this now. So if let me just go back. I'm going to have some of these new records that are going to get created. And if I do an insert now, you can see that the inserts are, I have a duplicate key, let me change that. You can see that the writes are a lot faster than they were before, right? Because now I have this regional by row table. And same thing, if I do select star from dad jokes where ID equals 2, oops, typos. Boom, I get fast reads. So depending on what your use case is, each of these multi-region table abstractions can make your application snappy for what you need. If you need fast reads everywhere, a global table might be useful, even though you might take a little penalty on the writes. If you can partition your data to be local for each region, then regional by row tables might be useful for you. Or if your application is just running in one primary region, then you can just use regional tables. So pretty neat as far as the breadth and ease of functionality that you can use to do multi-region. The last thing I'll show here is survival goals. So this is neat. This is one of my favorite features. So what you can do is you can show your survival goal of the database. So what this is saying to me is that right now I can survive any sort of zone failure, availability zone failure. So if a node goes out or an availability zone goes out, I have resilience. It's not a problem. What I can also do is increase that survivability to a regional level. So if I lose an entire region, I can make sure that I can survive that as well. And all I have to do is the coolest command, alter database, dad, survival, what is it? Survival goal, and then region, and that's it. And then, my database is going to be configured to, survive regional outages. Pretty neat. The other thing I'll show is, remember what I showed that you can have all these different nodes that are here. You also have commands to actually decommission these nodes or shut them down as you're testing. So this is neat too. I mean, you're simulating disasters on your laptop. I can say decommission node 7, right? Oh, I always spell this wrong. Is it two C's? Decom, 2 S's.
It's
right,
2
so
N's and 2 S's, Chris. Yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. So you'll see here, I'm I'm connected to node 7 here, but this is gonna decommission that node shortly, and we'll see it in the UI.
Right there.
Yep. See, now I'm down to only 8 live nodes. I have, Cockroach recognizes this. It says, oh, I have replicas that are under-replicated. It's going to up-replicate them for you so that you have more resiliency. But you just did a node outage, and again, you can still do, you can still run your workload, and it still works.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this case, Chris, you could have decommissioned everything in a region and it would have survived because you changed the survivability goal for the entire database, right?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I pressed that one, but I could.
That's okay, but you could. But I guess you could. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And then and I think one of the key things here is, you talk about certain use cases is this, that, and the other. It really comes down to the table, doesn't it? Like it really comes down to what that data is in that table and what you want to do, either high, latency issues or survivability, correct? I mean, I presume that's a lot of the conversations you get into around this, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can be really granular. I mean, you could do this. I like doing things at the database level because then it's just kind of like set it and forget it, and the tables just follow what's going on at the database. But you can go down to each table level, or you can go down to the row level, which is really cool. It's really
right.
simple. A lot of granularity as far as how you want your database to behave for your application.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think, when we typically think of a database, we just think of this logical model, right? I have tables and schema and referential integrity, and we still have all that. This is still, wire compatible with Postgres. This is still relational syntax, right? It's still SQL. But there's this physical layer that you have to start thinking about when you become distributed. I think that's the trick here. Like, I think that's the paradigm shift, right? Like that's where things start to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. How's the chat? Any questions over from the chat?
Yeah, nothing, man. Your demo's that good, buddy.
I did it all.
I know. No, that's it. That's a really, really good demo. And Chris, that demo was actually running locally on your laptop. I mean, we could have run that in Cockroach Cloud itself.
Absolutely.
We just chose to do it locally, just as from a demo point of view. And it's simulating the round trip times. It's simulating the network speeds and all that, right? So, but it is. I mean, that was 9 nodes, and we showed it, across the board, but all self-contained.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see. The only difference is in Cockroach Cloud, you can't go kill nodes. Locally you can do that, but our SRE team wouldn't be too happy if we just started database.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why the local development is great for this, because then you can do all kinds of failure scenarios and then test it, and then have it hosted within Cockroach.
It's awesome.
Cockroach Cloud.
So Chris, eventually, we talk a lot here about, a serverless version of CockroachDB. Is any of this going to matter eventually? You know what I mean? Like, is there a future where the database just does all this for you, right? I mean, I've never seen it do it where you write a record and that record is going to stay in Europe or whatever. That's cool, right? Is the future just this takes care of this for you?
Yeah, I think that's where we're slowly heading towards. I feel like the serverless piece will, certainly help you with, certainly from a cost perspective, right? If the database is, not, and we do this. We do get customers that say, hey, I only need my database running 6 hours a day.
Right.
It will certainly help with those types of options, or dev environments too, where I only want to, I don't need a full permanent cluster. I just need to only use it for development purposes when I'm awake.
Right.
It'll certainly help that. And then I think the more that we, learn from our customers too, I feel like that's where we get the best feedback on how to make these abstractions or make the database easier. This will just get more and more simpler, especially as we move to serverless.
Yeah. And I think the future of this gets really interesting because, are you automatically moving data to follow users, and that kind of stuff does it really matter does it really matter to you what a location is after a while? Let the database just deal with all that. And I think that's where this is headed, but let's make it simple enough where it is just a couple of DML statements, which I think is just awesome. So
yeah,
that's a great demo, Chris. Thank you. I enjoy your dad jokes. I enjoy your t-shirt. I enjoy all of it. So I enjoy working with you, dude. So
yeah, man, it's always fun. I think we do a good ham and egg here.
Yeah, that's right, buddy. So let me just.
Oh, we did have a question.
Oh, there was. Okay, good.
All right, so Jayashri asked, how does Cockroach support column-wise partition? That's an interesting question. So column-wise partition. So there's ways that you can do. I'm not sure if I understand the question in its entirety, but there are things you can do with like grouping columns. Like we do have column families that you can use within the database.
Yep.
Say, hey, I want to create put all these columns in a logical part of the table, and these other set of columns in another logical part of the table. Sometimes you're doing that for optimizing reads and writes, where you have, hey, I have maybe a JSON blob that I constantly want, that needs to be written, but all these other fields need to be more read centric. So I can kind of use the column families to figure out, hey, how do I get better read write patterns from a table by partitioning or dividing up the columns. I'm not sure if that's exactly answering Jay's question, but
yeah, I think it's that's one way. I also think about this. Where my head went with this, Chris, is can we automatically take all rows that, hey, say one of the columns is country code and they're German. Like, can we inspect that and say, okay, all those records are going to live in German servers? I mean, we showed it very generically, like it was just the write that did that, and it was kind of a hidden column. But you can actually partition based on, what it is that you think is correct for, that data, and the data itself can actually partition, right? The column can actually drive the partitioning and where that data is going to live in the database itself.
That's correct. You can you can be very discreet to say, hey, if I want to partition by cities or by a country code or something like that, then say,
That's
yeah,
right.
the value of these records to go into this partition or this part of the database. So you can certainly do that. The way I was doing it just within the demo was automated. So it was just the table was just looking at, hey, what locality was this record being written to, and using that to partition the data.
Right.
Cool. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So they thanked us back, so we thank you for the great question, Jayashri. So, all right, well, thanks, Chris. That was a great demo. Just to recap, we have simplified this multi-region thing for a database down to kind of 4 settings, 2 of which are optional. I mean, they're really simple kind of DML command line stuff that you could run. Inspection of that and observability of kind of what's going on in the database is all in the UI. That Chris showed. We have lots of other demos that we'd love to show you if you're interested in deeper exploration of Cockroach database. But really ultimately, you define cluster regions, you define database regions, and let the database deal with where data lives and how things are going to work out. Like, it's one of my favorite slides, dude. You just execute a couple statements and your mind's blown. It just takes care of it, right? CockroachDB really automates, where the data is going to live, so that you can optimize for these low latency writes or survivability goals or whatever it is you want to do, right? And so, for us, it's really about making data easy for you, the developer. No matter how you're deploying your application. I mean, look, this is applicable in a small application or something global. It doesn't have to be across the ocean. You may just need to survive, the failure of another region. Why are you setting up active passes and doing asynchronous replication? And, imagine that on a sharded database. These things get really, really difficult. And so, for us, it's really about how do we actually just strip all that complexity out and really simplify these sort of complex tasks so that anybody can do this. And so that's, I'm kind of proud of the work that the engineering team has done here, and the product managers in designing this stuff. I do think it's pretty cool stuff. If you're interested in learning more about kind of what we're doing now, again, Chris talked about Cockroach Cloud. You can go and start using this. You could actually download the binary and use it on your laptop as well. But our docs does a great job of explaining all these things. So if you just go to our website and then go to the documentation, check out kind of multi-region and these things. There's lots there. You can actually get into Cockroach Demo. A lot of stuff that Chris showed you is there, but we'll send the link out to everybody post-event, and we'll include the Git repo that Chris had. So with his dad jokes complete, you could add your own and whatnot. So, but with that, I don't know. I thank you, Chris. Thank you so much, dude. Did you have anything you want to add? Like hey, good day?
No, I would say, enjoy your summer. It's been it's been an interesting year or two, so enjoy the time. And, you know, I know the Olympics are here, so I'm thinking about multi-region as well. So I think
Oh
it
my
would be good
gosh.
apropos webinar today to kind of what's going on in the world.
You are such a dad joke person.
I know.
Thank
Can't
you,
stop.
Chris. You know, I do look forward to actually seeing you in real life at some point soon. I'm super excited about that. But everybody, thank you for joining us. We do hope this was valuable today. You know, we try to make it as much about, you know, code and helpful for you in terms of, you know, how this might help you in your applications. But I'm going to return it back to the DZone team. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that, DZone would like to thank you, Jim and Chris, for a great presentation. DZone would also like to thank Cockroach Labs for providing the audience with a great webinar. Lastly, thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you learned something new that will help you in your developer career. Have a great day.